Yeah, I think we are good to go. And yeah, first of all, thanks for making the time, James.
Hmm.
Really glad to have you here. And yeah, for those of you who don't know James, he has been involved in the crypto space since a while. Now, like probably one of the, you can call him an OG of the space, and is now very heavily into the NFT ecosystem, and is also part of like many of the biggest DAOs in the ecosystem. So you can feel free to ask any questions related to NFTs and DAOs. Maybe James, if you would like to add anything to that, and then we can start off with what are the exciting things in the NFT space that you have come across.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, as Denver was saying, um, I've been in DAOs. That's what actually fascinated me with Ethereum was the DAO hack in 2016. And it was this rabbit hole that I went down. And now looking back and just thinking about what it was like in 2016, the whole ecosystem has completely changed for the better. Uh, but crypto, it moves so fast. In 2016, my mindset was, man, maybe one day I'll be able to understand all of what's happening in crypto and DAOs and what all of this means. And then, with the help of people from the ecosystem, and that's what I really love about Ethereum. Everyone is so helpful, and that's why I feel kind of an obligation to even like be here today, just to pay it forward, because in 2019 we launched Moloch DAO, and looking back 2016, I can remember having thoughts like, this is amazing technology. Hopefully one day I'll be able to understand it to some degree. And then 2019 was able to help contribute to launch a DAO framework. Now in 2021, with all the craze of NFTs, it's amazing how quickly um, the mass adoption is happening. Um, so yeah, I'm here to just to help answer any questions, talk about NFTs, talk about DAOs. I also have experience with layer two, so payment channel construction specifically. Can also answer questions about that as well. And I have a CEO of a company called A Bridge. We have a consumer product called Collabland that helps token holders coordinate over Discord and Telegram. So I guess if you want to talk about social tokens too, so it's DAOs, social tokens, layer two, and NFTs. It's kind of where I sit in that kind of that intersection.
Right, right. So let's take it from like maybe let's start off from uh, NFTs itself, and then how did you like you know come to realize that NFTs are really getting there? Like when did you start to see you know that it's really going to take off? Uh, like and what do you think has been the fundamental reason for this change to happen, like before, like because NFTs as a concept has been there since 2-3 years, but then any idea of why like it's like now suddenly booming maybe?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. I can give you my thoughts. It's the $1 billion question. Um, I was launching the first payment channel network into production when CryptoKitties in 2017, clogged the network, and that's really what made me understand, because I have a gaming background. So before um, getting into Ethereum and crypto, um, I helped launch a game called Farmville when I was at Zynga. And when I looked at CryptoKitties and I saw the popularity just within inside the ecosystem of Ethereum, this is 2017. It wasn't as big as it is now with DeFi and everything, but that's when I understood. Okay, gaming is probably going to be a way, or some form of games um, that's is going to be popular, and NFTs um, seem to be an easier concept to understand. You know, it's fun. It's like a game, CryptoKitties, um, and there isn't really much to kind of learn. Like when it comes to DAOs, you have to understand about governance and tokens and everything like that. So I saw, and I think we all saw glimpses of it in 2017. To be honest, I had no idea that it was going to hit like it's hit now. I think it's taken a lot of people by surprise. I think it's because, as a builder and as a technologist, I come at it and I look at it from a, technical perspective. But when you pull back and you look at the macro environment, whether it's the pandemic, here in the U.S., just the stimulus checks and just everything that's happening outside of the ecosystem that has put pressure or has changed the context. Whether it's internet celebrities like Elon Musk, uh, you know, pushing Doge, or these other forces that cause these second order effects. Um, and I've through Collabland help launch meme, which is a token. It was a joke on the it was Jordan just sent out because this was happening in the summer of DeFi. Just this mock up of just being able to create your own DeFi coin, and you just minted some tokens, and the only feature that they had was Collabland, where you had this token permission chat group, and people were like, "Hey guys, what should we do?" And at that time, DeFi was and farming was kind of this interesting concept that was just starting to get overused a bit, and said, "Why don't we, kind of in the spirit of fun, just provide some type of farming technique for NFTs?" And so that was kind of my first, oh, it's looks like it will be successful because the mechanism designed for the meme token was working. And that was my first glimpse into like NFTs coming into the market and uh, becoming a thing. And, you know, um, the core team at Meme reached out and was talking to all of the digital artists at that time. And Beeple was one of them. And, at that time, Beeple was saying that if he can get one of his pieces sold, I think it was for like 69K, that he would do a drop with Meme, because $69,000 just seemed at that time, and this was just a few months ago, was just outrageous, or just very much a stretch goal. And then you see, his work get sold, his NFTs, first for around 3 mil, and then that Christie's auction that kind of really opened the door to mainstream audiences, to NFTs. I, I think NFTs, it was kind of inevitable because it's the most tangible. It's not about like money. It's not about economic systems. It's about a piece of digital art or a song. It's much more tangible, so it makes sense that people are, or the mass mainstream is gravitating to it. Uh, but with this kind of force, and with this kind of just enthusiasm, is not something that I expected. Um, so yeah, it's all about like with a lot of things in Ethereum, right? I do think NFTs are the gateway into crypto for a lot of mainstream audiences.
Mhm.
And it's inevitable, just like other things will be inevitable. Like I think DAOs, governance, social tokens will be inevitable. It's just the timing, like when and how is it going to pop, or is there going to be like an event, like what is that event going to be? What is the people's of at Christie's for NFT moment for other things within Ethereum? And I also think that um, you know we need to, because we only have context of what has existed before and what we know. So there's this delineation or separation between like NFTs of digital art versus a DAO, let's say for governance, or social tokens, like you have your online community has its own currency, and these are separate things because these are the analogies that we know, but because it's all crypto, it's going to get remixed and reimagined, I think, in ways that we can't really comprehend right now. And how we get to that future is through these experiments, these iterations, this emergent design. And so, for example, the other day, I bought an NFT. It was a work by Lee Jin. She used to be a partner at A16Z,
Okay.
and she started her own fund. And she had this piece about the creator economy and the middle class for the creator economy. Can that exist? And really spoke to me because, um, with these platforms, there's this kind of, I guess, systemic issue where only the top 1% of the 1% really can make an impact or be popular because of the algorithms and the way that, when you take a look at it, the way that advertising works, um, online advertising, and talking about YouTube specifically, and you get on this treadmill of having to produce content consistently. And can you have a system where, and she's posing and asking that question of a creator middle class, where can you make a living as a creator online? And for me, looking at it through crypto, I think there's a lot of possibility. Um, but, you know, how do we make that reality happen? And so, when I looked at her NFT being sold, I saw it as a way to communicate. So we communicate online via data, but I was able to communicate by purchasing the NFT, having a dialogue, creating that interaction. And
And
I
James,
think
you
that's
touch on a
what people.
very important point, wherein let's, just switching the gears back a bit. You were talking about the entire DeFi summer incident where we were all just creating food coins and these governance tokens, which were popping up from everywhere, which were just providing liquidity. It did bring a lot of money into the entire DeFi ecosystem. I mean, billions of dollars. And similarly for NFTs, with people selling his artwork for over $69 million, and all these artists that are joining in and creating and being able to sell these artworks is drawing a very similar parallel where people are not really convinced, especially creating a parallel between the tangible art as we have in the real world and also similarly that we have in the NFT ecosystem. Comparing those two together, when people actually think that NFTs aren't really as valuable as we are putting them to be. I mean, it's still a PNG file that is being sold for, let's say, $69 million. I mean, what makes that so valuable as compared to maybe like a Mona Lisa or a Da Vinci painting that is hanging, right? So it's essentially the community. I mean, the entire painting, if we disregard the points of money, because we've got both of that in both the ecosystems. We've got money in the traditional art world, and we've got that in the NFT world. Now, what's really missing is, as you said, a conversation, a dialogue. I mean, especially with Da Vinci, you have so many sort of documentaries. You have an entire history that is associated with that specific artwork. You've got various institutions that are guaranteeing its provenance and the provenance of the story. So you've got this certain rarity and this conversation and dialogue and history that goes along with that artwork. So once you are actually purchasing that specific art piece, you are actually participating or having a dialogue with that entire history of that specific artwork and with the artist. But with the NFT ecosystem, considering it's just now starting to boom and it's just coming up, I mean, we haven't even scratched. We don't even know what's going to come in the next month or a week, which is going to completely change the ecosystem. But one of the important things that I guess people need to understand is actually getting into this ecosystem and why NFTs are starting to become popular. Because if, even in this chat, and a lot of people that I talk to ask me the same question. I mean, why are NFTs so valuable? And it's sort of, as you said, it's having a dialogue with that creator. It's participating in this uh, immersive experience, which is just not limited by money. So, I mean, so my question really here is, you've been a part of Moloch now, you've been a part of the NFT ecosystem. What do you think can be the driver to create these kinds of cohesive communities, which are driven not just by money, but by value inside the entire community?
Yeah, that's a great question. The way I look at it, so, I think having a context and comparing it and contrasting it with DeFi and what happened, you see, the Uniswap and things get forked to like Sushi Swap because the mechanism design is embedded in the protocol and people can interact and you play the game and you know how to play the game and you can win or you can lose and the rules are prescribed in a smart contract. When it comes to NFTs, I think it's different. I think of NFTs and what's happening as a form of activism, where the artist is getting paid, and now, for example, like Blau, his user is 3LAU on the internet, but it's pronounced Blau. His album sold for $13 million, and what he did, and he turned around and he started an agency. And so they got signed with CAA, which is like an agency here in the U.S. In L.A. They sign a bunch of big actors um, and musicians. And so here, what you're doing is you're not prescribing rules in a protocol. You're telling people, "I believe in you." And those people then are being able to take and be empowered, and money is the beginning, and it's beyond just, okay, now I'm, I think it was with Beeple, he's a third richest living artist now, just in a matter of span of like, a few months. It took him 13 years of doing creations every day to become an overnight success. But now we'll see, kind of where he can help lead and now is empowered as entrusted. And I think that is really, what it's about. I think you see similar kind of overtones when you look at uh, like Wall Street bets, right? It's a form of activism, and it's going to start out as a toy. It's going to start out as like you know something fun, and it's going to be head scratching, and people are not going to understand. And this goes back to Chris Dixon, who is a partner at A16Z. He's like, every every technology starts as a toy or looks like a toy at first, you know. So I think
Exactly. It's very interesting that you bring this up. I mean, for people to actually be able to see this entire thing, I mean, I guess what really lacks over here is the ability to document. I mean, we being in this ecosystem see these massive changes, especially in the entire DeFi and this blockchain ecosystem where everything is just moving at a speed of light. For people outside the ecosystem to actually come in and actually experience these things being built in the public, these sort of overnight things that are happening, and to actually be a part of them is way more valuable than any sort of money incentive that is in the entire ecosystem. And I believe that should be the primary motivator for people to actually become part of this entire ecosystem. And I just feel that's really not being translated to people outside the DeFi or the entire bubble.
Yeah, I think the ecosystem is big enough now where, you know, if you're in DeFi, you're like your head scratching. You're like, what's going on with NFTs? And with NFT, if you're coming in through NFTs, you're like, what's happening in DeFi? There's a whole other world. And so you see these different, I guess, movements, if you want to call them. They all center around crypto, but crypto is just the tool, the medium in which we are existing in. You know, it's like saying, oh, you know, people coming into the internet via social media or via e-commerce. They're like different segments, but now you're seeing those segments kind of blur. And I think that's what you're seeing, or we'll see, and what will be exciting with crypto, right? Because what will happen is people, for example, what I'm doing with Lee Jin's work is we're going to take the NFT and we're going to put it into a contract that locks the NFT into a contract. And that contract then will mint shards of that NFT representing portional ownership of that NFT. I will sell that, and I will sell that those ERC20s, which is kind of like a timeshare or like a sliver of that NFT, like mentally, like you can think about it that way. And with that, you can buy into a DAO. And that contract that is locking the NFT will also have in it a bonding curve so that, you know, these tokens will get minted on demand because you want to buy a piece of this artwork, a sliver of it that will give you access into a DAO. And what does that DAO do? Well, that DAO will be able to manage funds that contract is accruing in terms of value. And you'll vote in this DAO to appropriate funds to creators. So this NFT, you know, that talks about the creator middle class is kind of like the anthem. It's the thing, it's not a completed work. It's the beginning of an organization that will then be able to allocate resources appropriately to creators. And if you believe in this, like, creator, that there should exist a creator middle class, you would buy into this token and then have governance rights to say, okay, how should certain amount or how much of the funds that are in the DAO should be allocated to these up and coming creators. So it's kind of like a, you know, Lee Jin coined the term universal creator income. If you're familiar with UBI, this is a way for creators to be sustained whether or not they're making work. So you're not having to get onto the content treadmill of like a YouTube and burn out. And there's all these mental health issues when it comes to creators and like having to play to the algorithms. And so it's this beginning of this blurring where the NFT, you know, is not like the end all of the work. It's actually just the beginning. It's a thesis that then could like become something else. And the NFT then actually represents an organization. And so we'll see this blurring of the lines even more as we move forward, where you'll have these social tokens not only participate and create a DAO, but like then also be able to participate in DeFi. And it's
This is
that
something that is
composability.
this is something that is very interesting. I mean, especially because now you are switching the stakes from not the entire money ecosystem, but actually defining value by providing something that is beyond money and being able to build that community, especially by a DAO. So it can be something like even a Gitcoin, but for NFTs, wherein you have all these creators that have maybe pooled in with their own creator tokens, or could be ETH, or could be Bitcoin, could be any currency, and then they've all pooled that, and now with everyone in the governance can actually vote and allocate funds. Maybe could be a monthly recurring funds, could be yearly recurring funds, so that it sort of brings on artists into the entire DAO, and they can just create. I mean, they aren't limited by anything. So especially in the traditional ecosystem where they might have to publish through and the intermediate sort of platform wherein they are actually sort of, there's a middleman that is maybe taking a cut of their pay, maybe the ability to censor their content in any way that they like. This actually allows the creators way more freedom, and it's just a much more holistic motivator rather than just having money drive the entire ecosystem.
Yeah, yeah. You know, like you have that value, um, but what are you going to do with it? I think that it takes a different mindset when you look at what's happening, because there's so much potential and composability here, and so I think fundamentally, from a mindset perspective, it's not thinking about things as zero sum. It's thinking about things as positive sum, and then thinking it in terms of like what happens, when when you can just easily see, just almost frictionlessly just move money around in a permissionless way. One example of this is what I see in terms of like what's happening from like these communities. There was a hack that happened with a social token issuer yesterday.
Viral, yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of the top communities that were dependent or had minted their coins, they had lost a lot of their value. And it was just amazing to see how these different communities decided to like help each other. And so instead of competing with one another in like a zero sum way, because a lot of these people, like everyone here is probably part of many communities. So it's not like zero sum where if you're part of one, you can't be a part of another. So you see Whale Community, which is a big NFT art collective, actually supporting and helping out financially to FWB, Friends with Benefits. And it's money and value is really more a signal now of like what you want to pay attention to, what you support. And I think that it's just another form of like interaction or communication. And we're at the, when Facebook first started, all you can do was like poke each other. And it was just like, hey, I see you there. And then, someone would poke you back. And that's all you could really do at the very beginning of, Facebook, really, as an interaction. This is way before they even had like the like button. And the like button and that signaling was like this innovation that it really allowed people to say, okay, this is what I'm paying attention to. But when you look at from like an economic perspective, what is the kind of inflation rate of a like. There's no cap on likes. So you like something, you can like a million things, and it just gets really noisy. And now we have this context of everyone knows what liking something is. What if you had a limited number? What if likes were scarce? And that's what you are seeing with, that's basically a vote in a DAO. And that's how you use crypto, a scarce digital asset, to provide more meaningful signals from an economic perspective. And I think we're just scratching the surface here, and we're just barely at the like poke level or stage when it comes to social tokens, because social tokens are a social network, but it's more than that. It's a socioeconomic network. And so I think we have to evolve or think about money in kind of a different way, but that's all we can know right now. Because, if you look at any new technology, like, filmmaking, when films first started, they would just, point them at a stage, because all they knew was vaudeville, live audiences. And later on, the medium of film has evolved, where you have multiple cameras, you have, editing, you have your own film language, where you can, from a viewer perspective, travel through time through these jump cuts and edits. And then, you have the medium taking its own form, and its own genres, whether it's, superheroes with Marvel Universe, or Bollywood, or dramas or comedies. Um, and so I think we're just at the beginning, and we'll see this like composability and this composition and these like really interesting remixes, if you will, because that's inherent to the internet, right? Like memes are just remixes, taking context of one thing and putting into another. You'll see that now with value exchange. And I think we're going to have to like reimagine in a lot of ways what money is, what value is, and how we're going to be able to use it. Because now we use money as a signal. Like people use it as, buying fancy things. But I think on the internet, it's going to mean something else. And that's what we're seeing in terms of experimentations with NFTs.
That's like, in fact, that's really interesting. So a couple of things that I got from the thing so far. One thing is like in some aspects, use cases where scarcity is inbuilt into the NFTs, they're kind of the value there is somewhat apparent, because I was just hearing to somebody who like bought CryptoPunks. I'm not sure if you have bought them yourself as too, but then uh, they basically think that it's part of history. It's going to be part of history eventually, like down the line, like maybe 20, 30 years down the line. CryptoPunks was one of the first projects that made use of the new token standard. So, it's kind of owning history. And because there were only 10,000 of them created, so even if you own one of them, you are automatically part of history. And that is for things that are, scarce. And maybe the same thing, kind of same logic uh, can be put for things like NBA Top Shot and stuff like that. But something really interesting that you mentioned was about artworks which kind of speaks to you. So maybe what you said about a like is just a like in the normal world, but then maybe people can use NFTs at least for art for now to maybe signal just how much just kind of quantify uh, that signaling, and also maybe financially support that person. So we also have some other questions here. Maybe we could uh, look at them also. Yeah, this is
Oh yeah,
also,
sorry. I'm on
yeah,
my phone, so it's hard for me to talk and look at my screen at the same time. I
no,
apologize.
completely understand. So also, yeah, more than this, like, are there any applications of NFTs? This is what Ankur is asking. Are there any applications of NFTs other than denoting ownership or as collectibles? What other aspects do you see this evolving into?
Yeah, I think it's going to have to evolve. I think that, right now the NFTs are like, to set the context, are just used as, like you're saying with CryptoPunks, as like a status symbol,
Yeah,
right? Like I can provably say, hey, I own this CryptoPunk. I'm an OG and part of history, and that was me. And
yeah,
so that's going to be the equivalent of a, digital form of like a status of like a Rolex watch, or something like that, right? To show not only like, hey, is this valuable, but I was there at the beginning. I have that credibility, that authenticity, because I was there at the beginning. I think it's going to have to evolve because you'll see a glut of NFTs, and it's different than, I think, the 2017 ICO boom, because these NFTs are different in nature because they're non-fungible, and they're for a lot of part a liquid. So I think what will happen is, and this is why I want to experiment with the Legion work and fractionalizing it. So it's kind of locking these NFTs and making them more liquid. But what does that mean, right? Like, and this is what is that, if I shard that, was purchased, that I bought, now become like meaningless or worthless, or what does it mean to own like a portion of an NFT? So thinking through that, and having like let's say like a buyout clause, where someone wants to buy and kind of unshard, if you will, or reconstitute the NFT. How do you do that? Because you have all these disparate token holders, that now, do you contact them and you just have to buy all the supply of the NFT, the shards, to then make it back or make it whole? So I've been thinking about this, and thinking, okay, well, if it's a DAO, and you can vote with these different shards, what if someone comes in and wants to buy out the NFT for like 100 ETH, for example, right? They can put a bid in for 100 ETH, and the token voters can vote, say, okay, yes, that's great. And so now the NFT can get unlocked for 100 ETH, and now that 100 ETH is in the contract, as opposed to the NFT. So the NFT is unlocked. And what do those coins that were part of the shard mean? Well, they're no longer useful. The DAO is like shut down and it's dissolved. And you take your sharded coin and you just get a proportion of that 100 ETH now, so that you've been bought out. And that makes me think, like, what does that mean? Well, I think that with NFTs, and what we'll see is, now we're seeing NFTs as like completed pieces of work.
right.
What I think you can see, and where this can go, is it can actually use for, like, for example, I'm an author, I want to write a book, and so I'm going to put up an NFT. This is my kind of summary outline. This is what the book is going to be about, let's say. And someone can buy the rights to it. Once they buy the rights to it, like a publisher, then they can create a DAO against it, and people can buy into it. So now the publisher, who typically is a distributor in, like, the real world, the pre-crypto world, actually now becomes more like an investor, and now is trying to create a fund for this book, get investors in that buy into this book, and then in hopes that someday there'll be an exit, a buyout. So now you can think about this not only in terms of like media, but now this NFT can represent a startup, an organization. And this
This
could
is
potentially be,
exactly similar to what Alex did. I mean, when Alex had to move out to California, he he essentially tokenized himself, created a token called Alex. Now, with that, he essentially raised $20,000 from 30 people and said that he will give like 2.5% of his yearly income will be
Mhm.
dispersed to those 30 holders. So now those people who contributed those $20,000, with that, Alex moved to California. He worked in the entire crypto ecosystem. He created his own company, Try Showtime. He worked on so many other projects that his token value itself skyrocketed. I mean, the entire supply was worth roughly $500,000, and all the way from $20,000. So NFTs at its core are just tokenization. It's the ability. So essentially, tokenization of a moment in time could be an NBA Top Shot. It could be tokenization of a specific domain name with ENS domains. It could be tokenization of your own human. So like Alex, it's it's the ability to get people invested, and as James also said, be able to signal what the community actually likes, what the community actually supports, and to have this entire community behind you is what gives the entire ecosystem value rather than money.
Right. Yeah, 100% agree. It's, for me, reducing coordination costs. And that's what really, crypto does, a blockchain. And like the first use case of money is great. And so people are like bank the unbanked. You're disintermediating banks. And I think money is like, for a scarce digital asset, one of the killer apps. I think voting is another one as well, right? Because you don't want you want only a certain amount of votes and people not to be able to double spend a vote, because voting is a form of power, and so is money. But overall, it's a ability to reduce coordination costs at the end. So you want to call it an NFT because that's what's popular in the market right now, and that's what we know, and that's kind of tangible to people, and people understand that. That's the wedge. That's kind of like the entry point. And we have to think about it in the constructs of what we know, and what kind of currently exists. But what's really interesting is this emergent design, where people are going to take this, remix it, make it into something that is inherent to the medium. And so when you look at the technology and you go back, like I don't know, like before the internet, it was all broadcast based. That's how you were able to reach the masses, right? The technology had shaped culture. You had these gatekeepers, because you had one broadcaster that's broadcasting one way to a lot of people, and then the internet came around, and what's inherent into the media is that it's interactive. And so you go from this like web 1.0 that took the understanding of broadcast technology and just mapped it onto the internet, and thought that, okay, this is just a more efficient form of broadcasting. Whereas Web 2.0 showed that it's interactive. It turned consumers into producers. And if you think back and talk to people and research, what was written 20, 25 years ago, people are like, who's ever going to want to blog or microblog? But that's basically what Facebook posting is, or Instagram or Twitter, right? Because it's inherent to the medium. And we didn't really imagine this world now, 20 years ago, of people being hyper connected and what impact that would have on culture and society. I mean, you look back, even to the formation of the Industrial Revolution, that is what caused the formation of modern cities, because you needed factories and people to work. And if you look back at like the education system, it was not so much to like learn, but is to create, at least in the US, to create workers at the end who knew the rules, to create good citizens that can then work at the factories. So technology shapes culture, right? And I think that's what we're seeing in Web3, and we're trying to understand this. So, like if I were to go back in time and I were to show you the iPhone, you're like, oh, yeah, this is great. I get it. It's the internet in your pocket. Wow, it's really fast and it's, great. And you're like, no, hiking, and people are house by just tapping a few buttons. And these second order effects are the things that we couldn't imagine with the technology, but that's shaped the culture. And that's kind of what we're playing with right now. And so, I think for everyone here, when you talk about NFTs, you talk about crypto tokens, all of that, it's trying to keep an open mind and trying to understand, what is inherent to the medium itself with crypto that we can do and what we can imagine. And what we're seeing now is just the very beginnings of, not very, because you have to start somewhere. That conversation of NFTs as collectibles, but it's going to be so much more than that, more than we can like kind of really even imagine now. And it's going to happen through emergent design. People are going to like take it step by step, and they're going to say, hey, this is what we can do now. And so I don't want it to be limited by just what we know as collectibles, but kind of understand like what how we can stretch the boundaries more than anything else. And I think that's what's exciting as a builder now, doing things that couldn't quite be done before. And that's what I think of now. So as an engineer, or entrepreneur, like have an idea, I'm like, oh, this is great, let me go build it. Now it's a little bit different, and you take the medium, as the message itself. Me buying that piece, that Li Jin piece, and everyone seeing it being bought, and like, oh, it gets tweeted, retweeted, or whatnot, and people understand and learn about the creator middle class. It's building this in public, and keeping that attention. And I think that's inherent in crypto, is that as an engineer, you're not building and then releasing something. You're like, you're being social and building a community or a following kind of at the same time. And so people are going to start following this project because they're like, whoa, what's happening here? This NFT is not just an NFT. It's going to turn into a DAO. What's that? What's going on? And it's like this interactive development that's happening. That's really fascinating. It's almost like performance art, if you will. And you're just performing via technology in public, interactively with people. So it's I think going to take a different mentality when you step back at it, not just what you can do with the technology, but like how you develop as developers and interact with people and a community of people online.
Right. So yeah, so that's really, that's really interesting, and yeah, like, what you say is like, right now, completely agree with it. Like right now, mostly what people from the outside can see is collectibles, but then what it's doing is that it's drawing a lot of outside interest into the space, which overall is certainly great for it. And one of the things that personally that comes into my mind, somewhat of an analogy is that maybe even like something like electric cars or something, like they have been around for a long time, right? It's not very new. Even in India, there was a company named Reva, if you've heard of it, and they manufactured these cars, these really small cars. But the problem was used to they've been around for a while, but they used to price it uh, a bit higher than the normal cars here, just because they couldn't offset their costs, their fixed costs of R&D and the batteries and everything. But the game changer was when Elon Musk tried to do it the other way around. What he did was, instead of trying to build a cost effective car from the start, he went the other way around. He first built the Roadster and got the attention and a larger portion of the funds from the rich folks. So then that kind of, and then he's working his way backwards into affordability and mass production. So then by the time he gets there, all the things that the R&D and everything that has gone through that adds up. So I think the early adopters will have to be probably people with means or something like that, and kind of see a parallel with this. I'm not sure how much sense this makes, but then
No,
that
it makes perfect sense. I think I see the same pattern with Uber, right? Like when Uber first started, they marketed only to, in the US at least, to black cars, which were high end cars or like kind of like, hired chauffeurs.
right,
And, it was very fancy. And so what they said in Uber was you take this app and you can, book time in a fancy car.
right,
I think from the very beginning, they wanted to have anyone be able to be a driver, but
yeah,
how you enter the market is not how you bootstrap, is not what the steady state looks like,
right,
right? It's same thing with like Facebook. It only started in universities at
correct,
first before it went wide. So you have to like get a wedge. You have to get your niche, right? And I think that's what you're talking about. And it may look backwards. It may
yeah,
like you're not building to a steady state.
yeah,
What how you start is not how you end up. I think
right,
that's what a lot of like developers and engineers think, like, I want to build the perfect system at scale.
right,
But it's you don't, it's a whole YC Paul Graham thing. You have to do things that don't scale at first,
yes,
and it may look almost backwards in terms of how you start out. And I think that's kind of, what is this like mass adoption look like? Yeah, it makes sense that it looks like fine art, where it's not like techie. It's not about DeFi, you
right,
know. But you come for the art, uh, but you stay for other reasons. You stay for the community. You stay for these other reasons. And I think this is how the story will unfold.
right,
And so I don't think it's you want to have a general guiding light, a north star in terms of what you want, but the exact implementation, if you try to skip forward to that when you don't even have, your first step, will throw you kind of off track, because it's like looking 20 miles ahead and trying to take your steps toward your destination without looking at the terrain right under your feet. And so I think, what you're saying completely makes sense. And that's why it's like NFTs. Okay, if that's how it's going to happen, then that's how it will happen. And then it's just trying to iterate your way toward that like larger vision of mass adoption in crypto.
Yeah, I mean, the concept of progressive decentralization is key to even platforms like Gitcoin. I mean, with NFTs, it's essentially people who are taking back the power and building their own communities, right? But it has to go step by step. We have to figure out what works initially, and especially at the current stage with people just starting to get the whiff of the entire ecosystem and figuring out that and bringing in new creators like Freelau and essentially into the entire ecosystem to just bring awareness and bring in more people so that together they can take a step as a community and build a community. I
Yeah.
think that's
yeah,
pivotal to the entire ecosystem.
right,
Yeah. And then things will happen along the way, like hacks and other things that are going to change the trajectory. This is where, like, when you're contacting reality, things never go as you think they're going to go. And then you just continue to roll with it, I did not make that pun on purpose, but this is what we do, and it takes engagement. It takes that interactiveness, and taking it step by step. So everyone here, building things, you know, keeping that in mind, just the beginning of the conversation. It's like the appetizer in the meal. We don't know what yet will happen, and this is part of this, fellowship, for everyone to kind of imagine, what could be the next step, what could be the next thing here, um, and I think it's so very early on, that this is the best time to dive into it, to experiment, understand kind of the whole. And right now, uh, and imagine what will be possible 2-3 years from now, because what you're building now and the things that you think of may not become widely known for a few years potentially. Just as CryptoKitties we saw in 2017 was popular, we had an idea or inkling, and it foreshadowed. So looking back from 2021 to 2017, you're like, oh yeah, I saw that. But looking forward, it's impossible to know. And so it's just continued experimentation and iteration.
True.
So I wanted to ask one question regarding hacks, like you mentioned. So whenever a DAO gets hacked, so what are the things that happens next? So how do people investigate or like go after these people? Like I just wanted to ask you who has experience in the industry.
Yeah. So like when hacks happen, all of it, whether for it, you call it a feature or a bug, everything is on chain. And so when a hack happens, you can follow the coin, and try to create a situation where you understand the interrelatedness of the transactions, and maybe tie it a wallet to something that's identifiable. But the whole forensic aspect of like trying to find out who owns what could be challenging, especially with mixers like Tornado Cash. And I think that's what the hacker did. From what I understand, with the most recent hack, is just mixed it through Tornado. And so you're going to have these privacy protocols, ZK snarks, that is going to shield identity and provide more anonymity. So it's yet to be known what the kind of repercussions of it is going to be like. Who knows what tech is going to come out to help identify users. Like, it's still kind of a mystery, really. Like, if you go back to the beginnings of who is Satoshi Nakamoto, or they, or group, or whatnot. So there is this like underlying in the tech, coming from cypherpunk culture, this pseudo anonymity aspect of it. So yeah, it's hard to know. I think this is where when it comes to future things and making things more resilient, it's just iteration, small, iteration at low stakes, and that keeps it more playful and fun. So we're seeing things now, especially in the social token space, where people are avoiding mainnet because gas fees and the price of ETH, which is this double whammy, are increasing. So it doesn't make economical sense in a lot of ways to send a social token to someone, because the gas fees are 10 times more than the worth of the token itself, especially for new communities that are trying to just get off the ground. You don't start out with inherent value, or the inherent value is not yet known. So there's layer 2 solutions, and so that complicates things as well, because when you start doing things off chain, how do you get visibility, because it's no longer on chain with these layer 2 solutions. So you're seeing different sidechain implementations, XDAI, Polygon, formerly Matic, and like Binance Smart Chain. There's EVM based chains where the transactions are cheap, and creating bridges from L1 to L2, or these side chains. And then you see other competing L1 chains act as like side chains. So I think you'll see more of that happening, where I think it looks like Ethereum L1 will become like the ultimate settlement layer, but you may have different chains, and who knows, it's still very early, but maybe XDAI is a DAO chain, maybe Polygon is a gaming chain, maybe BSC is a DeFi chain or sub chain, and so you may see it kind of be broken out in genres or categories that way. depending on how people coordinate. And then, there's so much assets or so much value locked up in Ethereum mainnet. It's gonna be hard to move that liquidity en masse to something else. So it looks like, for the foreseeable future, ETH mainnet is where, a lot of the assets and values liquidity will accrue. But we're just seeing, what will happen here when it comes to different L2 or sidechain offerings. Yeah, I kind of diverged from the original question and expanded on it. So
Yeah, no, that's really great because I think L2s are where things like social tokens and all doesn't make sense. Like at least at the current gas levels, like really,
yeah,
L2 makes much more sense. So before we move on to like kind of wanted to move on to DAOs after this, but just one last thing from the NFT space. Like I have an interesting question here by Shrey, who says, how do you see loyalties for usage of NFT artwork for physical goods uh, or digital goods, playing out? Would the OG creator still get a cut there? And also, something, the physical goods part is also, really interesting here. Do you have some thoughts on that?
yeah. It's I'm participating in a project called Meta Factory, and they call it digiphysical,
Okay.
where they tie the digital and the physical aspect. And really what you're doing is you're just buying clothing. And so they have these different DAOs within Meta Factory that are different. I guess you can equate them to fashion houses. And these designers creating clothing, and you buy them like through credit card, normal means on like Shopify. And from that, you are able to then get airdrop tokens and, and NFTs. And these NFTs are, so they have their first kind of pairing with the metaverse. So there's two aspects to this. There's buying a physical product and then getting a token. And then it's like getting a physical product. And now if you go to metafactory.ai, they sell a shoe that you can wear, and it has a 3D rendering so that you can, in crypto voxels, be able to wear that same representation of the shoe. And, there is these hardware chips. If you go to Kong is Cash, they actually embed a wallet. It's a hardware chip that they put into paper. So the Kong Cash, represents some denomination that also has a virtual backing to it. And I think you'll see interesting kind of connections between physical and the digital counterpart. It's going to be interesting to see how you can keep that linking, because what if you own both the digital and you own the digital print of an NFT, but you sell the NFT and you keep the print? How do you keep that linking, or what does that mean? Or is it more valuable if you both own the NFT and the physical print? I'm not sure. I think this is where the experimentation and people will come to, some type of consensus or draw some type of meaning based off of the limitations of the technology.
Right.
Even Unisocks is a good example. I mean,
socks, right?
Unisocks, yeah. I mean, you can burn one Unisock and get like a Uniswap branded socks. But because of the entire community behind Uniswap and Unisocks, one Unisocks actually costs you roughly $150,000. So I mean, it's with the community, $150,000. Yeah. So I mean, with the community, there's a lot of things that you can experiment with.
Yeah, I think we're just at the beginning, at the cusp of this. And again, as everyone here is developing, um, you know, uh, I, my take and my experience and what I can say, that's not obvious, is that as a developer, you're actually, like, at this moment in time, at least, I would consider yourself more like a, I don't know, a crypto artist. What you're trying to do is create novel systems that are interesting, that are intriguing. And it's less about finding the perfect system that gets the greatest yield. I think when you talk about NFTs, and if you're interested, it's like trying to create, I don't know, quote unquote artwork that moves the industry forward. Yeah, because who would have known a pair of socks would be 6 digits? But it's that meaning behind it, of unisocks. And I think as you look at things to pursue, depending on your interest, I would just keep the mind open to this understanding that what we're doing is performative, and keep that in mind. And this is what is going to change, I think, for developers moving forward. It's the most successful ones are going to look more like Elon Musk than like a Bill Gates, where Elon, he's tweeting, if you see his the filing for Tesla, they changed their titles. I think Elon is now called Techno King or something like that instead of CEO. So it's like, having a narrative, having a story behind what you're doing that people can follow and latch onto is needed now, because everyone is hyper connected and there's just so much noise. How do you rise above the noise? You have to do things that are a little bit unobvious to be able to attract curiosity and attention. And then what you're doing, beyond that superficial level, is what is going to keep people's attention. So Elon, if he didn't have Tesla or SpaceX or the Boring Company to technically, uh, you know, show that legitimacy, no one would care about his tweets. But it's that combination of the mastery in terms of the narrative and the performative aspects, along with the technical know-how, that I think is going to be this next evolution of developer. And I see that to a great extent in crypto, because with crypto, it's about belief. And, when you look and you peel back, you know, a crypto Twitter, and you look at the Bitcoin, Ethereum maximalists, it's more like a religion, because it's about spreading that belief. And that's when you think about, and when you peel away, what is money and why do they call it fiat? Fiat is, I think, the Latin word for faith. And that's what it is really all about. And so I think that in that context, you kind of have to reimagine what it's going to be like to be a crypto developer, like in the 21st century. And these are the things that I think about for my kids, in terms of like, okay, do I have my kids go on this, like my son, daughter, if they want to ever get into programming, do they, take this track and go and eventually work at Facebook or Google or Oracle or something like that? Or, what does that future look like? And I think this is the aspect of kind of the psychology of a developer that doesn't get talked about a lot, but needs to be a bit more highlighted. And, I don't know exactly what this all means. This is just pattern matching for me right now. But this is kind of, I guess, a unique insight that, I would just say at least should be more thought about, at least, as we move forward here in crypto.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, at this point, yeah, We certainly saw some, like, so recently for the Etherpunk hackathon that we did, you know, saw some interesting NFT projects. Of course, Anudit had some really a really cool project for that as well, and even, like, coming to the physical thing that you meant, that we've been speaking about. There was one by Jayashree that, kind of, like, you own uh, the NFT, and the NFT is tied to a physical assets, and whoever owns the NFT, you can kind of, stream rent, using using a protocol called Superfluid. So they were like, can stream rent. So that I found really interesting. But I think, I don't think she figured out the physical connectivity thing yet. Uh, Unless, Jayashree, could you confirm? Like, I think you.
I've been working on implementing IPFS and digital assets now, but physical I'm not too sure.
Right, right. So that's really interesting. And also we are also Pranav also he also worked on NFTs, and really, uh, so he tried to integrate, build a project that for the waifu culture, if you're familiar with it, James. So that's like, in Japan, that the waifus are really famous, and then there is
Yeah.
random waifus that are generated, and he was trying to kind of make NFTs out of it, and that's also pretty interesting. So yeah,
Yeah.
some really cool stuff there. Moving on, like, I also, like, want to spend some time that we have, probably discussing uh, DAOs. And I know you've been part of, Moloch and Metacartel. So, could you talk about how did you come to, be part of Moloch, and, maybe, how you got together with Amin, I think, for that, and, what were your kind of motivations, and how do you think that has played out?
Yeah. So in 2016, I was working at a online advertising agency, and through some contacts at Microsoft, actually got connected to Consensus, the blockchain company. And at that time, Consensus, I think it was less than 100 people, maybe even less than 50 people. And since I was in online advertising, we were thinking about using Ethereum to help verify, because online ad fraud it costs billions of dollars a year. And we came up with the system. It was very complex, and I was that's where I met Amin, and Mike Golden, and we are trying to figure out how do we boil this down into something that's very simple. And we came up with this white paper that described a token curated registry. And I was fascinated, coming from gaming, just thought naively that if I can figure out the mechanism design, and create a well balanced game, then everyone's going to start using it. And so from that TCR aspect, it was basically, a TCR is like very, very rudimentary version of, a DAO. And actually, when we're talking about TCRs, this is like very beginnings of like ETH 2.0, from like a research perspective. And Carl Flores was at the EF at that time. He's now with Optimism. But at the time, he was working with Vitalik and doing ETH 2.0 research when it came to staking. And the TCR concept was very similar. So I thought, okay, we're onto something. It's getting validation in like a different category. And so we wrote it and implemented TCR, and in the background was thinking like, through this whole kind of ICO boom, like, is there a better way to do this? Because even back then it didn't really feel sustainable, and so that's when we kind of thought of Moloch, and we were working on it for quite a while, kind of as a side project, just dabbling in it. And then Vitalik, I think it was like fall or winter of 2018, he was just sending out like $100,000 grants over Twitter, because ETH 2.0 researchers were like, it's really hard for us to survive. And this is one of the things with like decentralization. It's just there's not a top-down structure, and so it's just kind of ad hoc. And so Vitalik was like, "Oh, what's your address, wallet address?" And then just YOLO'd like 100,000, and then a couple other researchers said, "Oh, I need money too," and we're like, "Oh wow, like we have this Moloch thing. It's kind of complex. How can we help? Because ETH 2.0 is like a great issue to rally around." And so we said, okay, at the next ETH Global Hackathon, we're just going to release this DAO framework. And we just whittled it down to the most basic MVP that was usable. And then we just logged on as a forcing function to be able to, to release it. And I've always been interested in DAOs. That's what hooked me initially, got me down the rabbit hole from a technical perspective, the reentrancy bug, and then Solidity, and all of that at the very beginning. That led to token creator registry, that led to this Moloch version 1. I was not as involved in Moloch version 2, but we're releasing Moloch version 3 now, and that just came out of audit last week. It's highly composable, so you can actually have assets, for example, on mainnet, but you can submit proposals and you can vote, on a side chain. And so, trying to evolve with the times, but things are moving so quickly. And then now, with the whole Legion thing, probably going to bake in a DAO inside of an NFT, and just wacky different experiments like that. But ultimately, it's this thesis that's still being played out, is that what crypto or blockchains do is they help reduce coordination costs. And this kind of goes back at like Coase theorem. He won a Nobel Prize for the theory of the firm, saying that like individuals are going to be less efficient than a corporation. And here we have this ability now with the technology, it's possible to actually compete with corporations because of the technology allowing reduced coordination costs. And so it's just, what does that mean and what impact does that have? So it's half technical, but like half organizational behavioral science in terms of how people coordinate. And that's how we came up with Collabland, because instead of creating an interface for all of this, we're like, let's not disturb what people, or have to train people too much. Let's go to where people are at. And where are they? They're in chat, and so, Telegram is the chat platform that was most heavily used by crypto natives. So that's where we started. And then we were getting a lot of demand to also support Discord. And, that just seems like an emerging chat platform. And then we're like, hey, if we can do it on multiple platforms, why can't we do it on Twitter? Why can't we do it on Reddit? Why can't we do it on YouTube? Why can't we do it on, and then Instagram or Facebook? And, your mind just starts racing. And you're like, wait a second, if I pattern match here, you can actually have these different siloed platforms. They'll come and go.
Right.
But what stays consistent, what's the substrate that connects them all, is going to be, Ethereum. And we have some groups that, are coordinating on Telegram, and then some that are coordinating on Discord, but they're part of the same DAO, right? So like you can connect these communities, and now you're flipping the kind of commitment or the platform power. So instead of the platform calling the shots, can we come to a day where you have a DAO that is on Discord, but something happens on Discord, or I don't know, it's not just Discord, but whatever the platform is, and the community just moves from one platform to another. And what does that do in terms of the balance of power that platforms can have? And knowing that and having just that threat may, what they call a grim trigger, allow for better, I don't know, like equality, or leveling the playing field here when it comes to these new platforms that exist. So I wonder if DAOs will have their Wall Street bet moment. When will that happen? How that will happen? I think it will happen. I just don't know, timing wise, what that looks like.
Right. So just like, about Collabland, would you say it's sort of like, I know I just know that you're using tokens and NFTs. Maybe are you using that to kind of preserve reputation across platforms or something like that? Have I got it right? Or
well, we use it to gate access. So you have to hold the NFT or the token. We have a bot that says, if you move those coins out of that wallet that you associated with your platform username, you just automatically get kicked out of the group. So what it does is allows everyone else who holds the token know that everyone else that is in the chat also holds that token. That's how, we're reducing the coordination. How do you coordinate with token holders that are out there? And so it's kind of a manifestation of that, like blending of Web 2 and Web 3 together,
right.
And allowing for reduced coordination costs. You know what? I just looked at the time. I actually have another meeting at the top of the hour. I thought this was only going to last an hour, but this has been a great conversation. But I apologize. I will have to leave in a few minutes.
No, completely understand. Makes sense. And thanks a lot for joining us. I think any follow-up questions or anything, you're on the Discord, maybe they can tag you.
Yes.
There, ask you.
Yes.
Discord. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Please feel free to reach out, ask questions. Hopefully this sparked some interesting thoughts, and will spark interesting conversations. And I hope this is helpful and useful, and really appreciate what's happening here. And I think it has huge potential. And I think more than anything else, it's just everyone getting to know each other, and creating a community here that will have impact as you continue on your journey, understanding and learning about crypto and Ethereum. And I'm here to help. So I really appreciate the time and taking out the time to let me talk.
For sure.
Definitely. It was a super interesting conversation.
Yeah. Great to have you.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
And I hope
appreciate
your internet comes back too soon.
Yeah, it's like water. It's like a utility. I need it. I can't function without it,
Exactly.
for the most part. Yeah. But thank you. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I'm please reach out if you have any questions. Anyone, I'm here to help, and hopefully I can be useful.
Sure.